Welcome back, guys. Today's story is one of the most chilling cases I have ever looked into because it shatters an illusion that millions of people believe. Imagine a desolate stretch of highway just outside the glittering skyline of Dubai. It is March 19th and the blazing desert sun is just starting to rise. A local driver is cruising down the empty road when they spot something discarded on the shoulder. At first glance, it looks like a pile of debris dumped from a nearby construction site. But as the driver slows down, their blood runs cold. It is not debris. It is a young woman. She has a broken spine, shattered limbs, severe head trauma, and missing teeth. She is clinging to life by a thread, and her identity is going to expose a dark, terrifying secret. Her name is Maria Kovalchuk. Maria was only 20 years old, and she was the definition of someone with their entire life ahead of them. Originally from Ukraine, she was stunningly beautiful, incredibly ambitious, and fiercely independent. Like so many young women in the digital age, Maria utilized her looks and her business savvy to build a lucrative career. She was a successful model and a prominent content creator who had amassed a large following online. Her social media pages were filled with vibrant photos, travel adventures, and the kind of glamorous lifestyle that most people only dream about. Maria was not just a face on a screen. Her friends described her as warm, trusting, and fiercely loyal to her inner circle. She loved her family back home in Ukraine and was constantly working to secure a better financial future for herself. When you are rising in the international modeling scene, there is one city that calls to you louder than any other. Dubai is relentlessly marketed to the world as a shimmering oasis of wealth, luxury, and absolute safety. It projects a crime-free image where the elite gather to network and celebrate. So, when Maria received a highly exclusive invitation from individuals she considered trusted peers and influential socialites, it felt like the ultimate career milestone. She was invited to a private gathering, the kind of elite event hosted by prominent Russian elites and a wealthy businessman. To Maria, these were not strangers. These were the people in her industry, the insiders who held the keys to massive international contracts and career-changing opportunity. She packed her bags, grabbed her passport, and stepped into that glittering world expecting the night of her life. But after she arrived at the gathering, Maria simply vanished. Her social media went completely dark. For 10 agonizing days, her family and friends heard absolutely nothing. No texts, no calls, no updates. Just an eerie, suffocating silence. That silence was only broken on that desolate roadside on March 19th. The vibrant, beautiful 20-year-old who had walked into that party was now fighting for her last breath on the scorching asphalt entirely alone. The moment the paramedics arrive at that desolate roadside, the scene is pure chaos. Medics are rushing, shouting out her vitals, trying to stabilize her shattered spine and her devastating head trauma. Maria is immediately rushed to the nearest trauma center in Dubai, where she is thrown directly into the first of 4 major reconstructive surgeries. Her parents back in Ukraine finally get the phone call they have been dreading, but the information is fragmented and terrifying. The doctors tell them Maria has survived, but the severe trauma to her brain has caused significant memory loss. She cannot remember how she ended up on the asphalt, and she cannot tell the police who did this to her. With the victim unable to speak for herself, the police immediately retrace her digital steps to the night she vanished. Their investigation leads them straight to the prominent Russian socialites and the wealthy businessmen who hosted that exclusive gathering. These were the people Maria trusted, the industry insiders who were supposed to be mentoring her. When the authorities question them, their reaction is immediate and dramatic. They are hyperventilating, shedding tears, and acting utterly devastated by the news. They portray themselves as frantic friends who have been worried sick for 10 days. They give the police a highly detailed, fast-paced explanation of what happened that night. They claim the party was completely normal, just a group of friends having a few drinks and networking. But then, according to their story, Maria became disoriented. They tell the detectives that Maria wandered away from the group entirely on her own. They claim she stumbled out of the venue and accidentally wandered into a restricted, unfurnished construction site right next door. They insist they tried to look for her, but it was too dark, and they figured she had just called a cab and gone back to her hotel. Their narrative is incredibly persuasive. They paint a picture of a tragic, unavoidable accident. They suggest that Maria, walking alone in the pitch black of an unfinished building, simply lost her footing and suffered a catastrophic fall from a massive height. They sob as they tell the police how guilty they feel, repeating over and over that they should have never let her walk outside by herself. It is the perfect clinical alibi. It completely removes any malicious intent from the equation. It plays perfectly into the narrative that young people sometimes make reckless mistakes. The local authorities listen to these weeping wealthy elites and they buy the story completely. Official report is rapidly drafted and disseminated. The public is told that the beautiful young model simply had a tragic accident at a construction site. The case is practically closed before it even begins, written off as a terrible misfortune. The friends walk away, their reputations completely protected. But back in the hospital, as Maria slowly regains consciousness, her family starts looking closely at the medical charts, and the chaotic story of a simple fall starts to feel fundamentally wrong. The initial police report might have been stamped as a tragic accident, but Maria family and independent investigators absolutely refuse to accept that narrative. The physical evidence left on that desolate roadside simply does not match a random fall, and the pressure on Dubai authorities begins to mount. Eventually, the police are forced to bring the hosts of that exclusive gathering, prominent Russian socialites and the wealthy son of a Donetsk businessman, into the interrogation room. This is where the psychological battle truly begins, and guys, watching this interrogation gave me the chill. When these elite individuals sit across from the detectives, you would expect at least one of them to show genuine remorse or crack under the intense pressure of a criminal investigation. Instead, they operate with a terrifying synchronized precision. They absolutely refuse to confess to any wrongdoing. The detectives start pushing back, laying out the bizarre physical clues, but the suspects stubbornly repeat their fake alibi to justify themselves. They look the investigators dead in the eye and insist over and over again that Maria simply became disoriented, wandered away from the group on her own, and tragically slipped inside the dark, restricted construction site next door. They portray themselves acting like an innocent victim, denying guilt with a theatrical level of indignation. Whenever the detectives press them on the timeline, asking why they did not follow her or call for help immediately, the suspects immediately retreat into tears. They cry, they shake their heads in disbelief, and they act completely devastated by the accusations. They ask the police how they could possibly suspect them of hurting someone they considered a peer and a friend. Their performance is meticulously designed to mimic the panic and confusion of innocent bystanders who have been unfairly dragged into a tragedy. Detectives try multiple angles, point out that Maria's belongings, including her passport, were inexplicably left behind. They ask why a young woman thousands of miles from home would voluntarily walk alone into a dangerous, unfinished building in the middle of the night. But the interrogation hits a brick wall. The suspects do not deviate from their script for a single second. They stubbornly repeat their fake alibi, clinging to the narrative that it was a horrific, unavoidable accident. They know that as long as they stick to this singular, rehearsed sequence of events, their immense wealth and social status will protect them. They calculate that the authorities will be naturally disinclined to view elite socialites as violent criminals. The frustration in the room is palpable. If I were the detective, I would be so frustrated. The suspects are essentially daring the police to prove them wrong, confident that what happened inside that villa will forever remain a secret. They walk out of the interrogation room projecting absolute innocence, believing they have completely outsmarted the system. But they made one massive miscalculation. They assumed Maria's shattered body could never speak for itself. They did not anticipate the relentless, undeniable power of modern medical science, and what the forensic experts were about to discover would completely destroy their elaborate web of lies. The suspects walked out of that police station fully believing their wealth had bought them a permanent get-out-of-jail-free card. They assumed that because Maria's severe brain trauma had temporarily erased her memory of the attack, there were no conscious witnesses left to contradict their perfectly rehearsed story. But they fundamentally misunderstood how modern forensic pathology works. A victim does not need to use their voice for their body to tell the absolute truth. Maria's shattered body was a living, breathing crime scene, and independent medical examiners were about to read it like a terrifying book. When Maria was stabilized and underwent her 4 major reconstructive surgeries, independent forensic pathologists and specialized trauma surgeons began meticulously analyzing the specific geometry and distribution of her wound. The wealthy hosts had stubbornly repeated to the police that she simply slipped and fell from a high floor in an unfurnished construction site. But forensic physics is an exact, unforgiving science. When a human body falls vertically from a significant height, it produces highly specific, predictable skeletal trauma. Typically see massive compression fractures in the lower extremities, shattered pelvises, or unilateral trauma depending on the precise angle of the impact. But Maria did not have the injuries of someone who took a vertical fall. When the trauma doctors reviewed her medical charts, they discovered a horrifyingly different story. Forensic experts documented severe, localized scalp injuries, a brutally broken spine, and completely missing teeth. Most importantly, they found massive defensive fracturing on her upper limbs and forearms. You do not get defensive fractures from hitting the ground, you get them from desperately raising your arms to protect your face while someone is repeatedly striking. Medical reality was absolutely undeniable. The forensic evidence scientifically dismantled the entire tragic fall narrative. The doctors proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Maria was subjected to an unwanted assault and sustained multi-directional blunt force trauma. With the medical data completely destroying the fake alibi, independent investigators and Maria's family finally uncovered the terrifying truth of what actually happened inside that glittering Dubai villa. This was never a casual networking event among trusted industry peers. It was a highly orchestrated, dark gathering often referred to in the international modeling underworld as a Porta party. Maria had been lured into a trap. These elite syndicates utilized coercive slave contracts to completely strip young women of their autonomy. The moment Maria walked through those doors, her passport and belongings were confiscated to guarantee she could not leave. When she realized the horrific reality of the situation and attempted to flee the premises, she was hunted down. The prominent Russian socialites and the wealthy businessman did not lose her in the dark, they caught her. Missing teeth, the defensive wounds, and the broken spine were the direct result of the unimaginable physical torment they inflicted on her for daring to escape. Medical science proved that she was beaten nearly to death and then callously dumped on the side of the highway, while her attackers went to the police and cried fake tears. Once the independent medical examiners released their irrefutable findings, the carefully constructed illusion of that Dubai villa completely shattered. The truth was out in the open, and it triggered a massive international outcry. The Ukrainian authorities officially opened a human exploitation investigation, confirming that Maria was not the victim of a clumsy accident, but the survivor of a highly organized predatory syndicate. The investigation exposed the terrifying reality of these highly exclusive parties. The wealthy hosts were not looking for networking opportunities or business partnership. Their motive was absolute, terrifying ownership. They utilized these illicit slave contracts to legally and psychologically strip young women of their fundamental human rights. They wanted complete control, demanding that their victims surrender their autonomy, their passports, and their very right to speak without approval. When Maria bravely resisted that complete subjugation, they tried to violently erase her existence. Today, Maria Kovalchuk is slowly piecing her life back together. She was relocated to a secure medical facility in Norway, where she is undergoing intensive physical rehabilitation and enduring the agonizing process of learning how to walk again. Her survival is nothing short of a medical miracle. But this is where the story takes a dark, deeply unsettling turn. If you are waiting for the part where the prominent Russian socialites and the billionaire businessman are dragged out of their penthouses in handcuffs and handed life sentences, you are going to be disappointed. Despite the overwhelming medical evidence proving the severe unwanted assault, the immense wealth and systemic connections of the perpetrators created an almost impenetrable shield. In the glittering ecosystem of ultra-wealthy expatriates, money often dictates the parameters of justice. Hosts utilize their vast financial resources to drag out legal proceedings, deflect international inquiries, and maintain their lavish lifestyles, practically untouched by the severe consequences they deserve. They retreated into their walled estates, protected by the very same social hierarchy that allowed them to operate these exploitation rings in the first place. Individuals who shattered Maria's spine and left her to breathe her last on the scorching asphalt are still out there, attending exclusive galas and hosting private gatherings. It forces us to confront a terrifying reality about the world we live in. We are conditioned to believe that wealth equates to safety, and that glittering cities offer a sanctuary from the darkness of human nature. But the truth is far more sinister. Sometimes the most dangerous monsters do not hide in dark alleyways or abandoned buildings. They hide in plain sight, dressed in designer clothing, offering you a glass of champagne and a promise that will change your life forever. They build their empires on the silent suffering of others, confident that their money can buy them an eternity of absolute, terrifying immunity.